So, my friend, welcome to the study, where we always have books and pens and beautiful, relaxing sounds for you to have a little bit of peace and calm. Today we're going to look at the life of the 18th century French composer Jean-Philippe Rameau. So you'll hear some page turning, some pen scratching as we watch a letter written to Rameau and see some beautiful images relating to his life and music. So make yourself comfortable and let's go on another journey to the 18th century France. Jean-Philippe Rameau, one of the most important French composers and music theorists of the 18th century, and perhaps of all time. He replaced Jean-Baptiste Lully as the dominant composer of French opera and stage. Rameau is also considered the leading French composer of his time for the harpsichord, alongside François Couperin. Little is known of Rameau's early years, but he was born on 25th of September 1683 in Dijon, where his father, Jean, served as organist in several churches around Dijon. One of 11 children, 5 girls and 6 boys, Jean-Philippe was number 7. He was taught music before he could read or write, and he was sent to the Jesuit college at Gaudrin for his education. Though he was meant to study law, he was not a very good student, and decided that he would be a musician, so his father sent him to Milan. On his return, he worked as a violinist in traveling companies, and then as an organist in provincial cathedrals, before moving on to Paris, where, in 1706, he published his earliest known compositions, harpsichord works that make up his first book, Pièces de clavecin. By 1709, he had returned to Dijon to take over his father's position as organist, with a 6-year contract at the main church. However, Rameau left the post for similar jobs in Lyon and Clermont-Ferrand. During this period, he composed motets for masses, as well as secular cantatas. In 1722, he returned to Paris, and it was then that he published his most important work of music theory, Traité de l'harmonie, the treatise on harmony. This established for him a great reputation, and in 1726 he published his Nouveau Système de musique théorique. In 1724 and 1729, respectively, 2 more collections of harpsichord pieces. It was also during these years that Rameau tried his hand at stage music. Approached by writer Alexis Piron, he agreed to provide songs for Piron's popular comic plays that were written for Paris fairs. Rameau and Piron collaborated on 4 stage works, starting with L'André in 1723. None of the music from this little foray has survived the centuries, however. On 25th of February 1726, Rameau married 19-year-old Marie-Louise Magnot. Marie-Louise was from a musical family in Lyon and was herself a singer and instrumentalist. The couple had a happy marriage, producing 4 children, 2 boys and 2 girls. Despite his fame and endeavors in the music field, however, Rameau could not secure a post as an organist in Paris. It was when he was almost 50 that Rameau decided to embark on the operatic career for which he became famous as a composer. In 1727, he had approached writer Antoine Hudard de la Motte for a libretto, but nothing came of it. After seeing Monteclair's Je Fitte in 1732, he then tried his hand at the prestigious genre of tragédie en musique. Rameau's Hippolyte et Aricie premiered at the Académie Royale de Musique on the 1st of October 1733, and was immediately recognized as the most significant opera to appear in France since the death of Lully. Some, such as the composer André Campra, were stunned by its originality and wealth of invention. Others found its harmonic innovations discordant and saw the work as an attack on the French musical tradition. These 2 opposing camps, the so-called Lulliists and Ramoneurs, fought a pamphlet war over the issue for the rest of the decade. It was at this time that Rameau made the acquaintance of the powerful financier Alexandre le Riche de la Poupinière, who remained his patron until 1753. La Poupinière's mistress and later wife, Thérèse d'Ailly, was Rameau's pupil and a great admirer of his music. In 1731, Rameau became the conductor of La Poupinière's private 15-player, extremely virtuosic orchestra, where he could have a free hand for his music, trying out his new effects. It was a post he would hold for 22 years. Rameau, however, was an exacting master and notoriously quick-tempered. One outburst, during which he barked at the harpsichordist and the orchestra's leader, violinist Jean-Pierre Guignon, resulted in 2 resignations. Jean-Pierre Guignon, born Giovanni Pietro Guignone, was a Franco-Italian composer and violinist par excellence. He was from Turin and gave his first performance in Paris in 1725. In 1730, he became a musician in the chapel of the Prince of Savoy-Carignan. He was greatly admired by the Queen and also entered the royal chapel in 1733, earning the archaic title of Roi des Violonistes, King of Violinists. His own concertos were performed alongside those of the famous Venetian master Antonio Vivaldi at the Concert Spirituel and were received with great success. It was after Rameau's particularly derisive outburst that this virtuoso musician brought himself to write his resignation. You told me yesterday that I don't know my job because I could not execute your music. I could respond in turn that you do not know yours, since you compose Baroque music that is impossible to play. But I prefer to accept the hurt you've given me. Therefore, I agree that I am ignorant and unworthy to participate in the performance of your sublime compositions. In consequence, I have the honour to inform you that you will no longer have to depend on me or on our regular harpsichordist, who has asked me to send his resignation along with mine. During these industrious years, La Poupliniere's salon enabled Rameau to meet some of the leading cultural figures of the day, including Voltaire, who soon began collaborating with Rameau. They abandoned their first project, Tragédie en musique Samson, because an opera such as this, on a religious theme by Voltaire, a notorious critic of the church, would in all likelihood be banned. At this time of his flourishing career, in the 1730s, Rameau introduced his new musical style into the opera ballet with the highly successful Les Indes Galantes. This success was followed by two tragédies en musique, Castor et Pollux in 1737 and Dardanus in 1739, as well as another opera ballet, Les Fêtes de l'Abeille, also in 1739. These works are among Rameau's most highly regarded. Mysteriously, however, Rameau fell into 6 years of silence, during which the only work he produced was a new version of Dardanus in 1744. It is possible that he had had a falling out at the Académie Royale de la Musique. 1745 brought a turning point in Rameau's career. Unlike Lully, who had collaborated with Philippe Quinault on almost all of his operas, Rameau rarely worked with the same librettist twice. He was demanding, bad-tempered, neurotic, and seemed unable to maintain a long-standing partnership with any of his librettists, with the exception of Louis de Cahuzac, who shared Rameau's temperament and who collaborated with him on several operas, including Les Fêtes d'Hymen de la Mort in 1747, Zaïs in 1748, Nice 1749, and Zoroastre in 1749. In addition, La Naissance d'Osiris in 1754, and Anacréon, also in 1754. Cahuzac also wrote the libretto of Rameau's final work, Les Boréades, that was premiered in 1763. These two forged new ground in integrating dance into their work, and when Rameau received commissions from the court for works to celebrate the French victory at the Battle of Fontenoy and the marriage of the Dauphin, they produced a sublime work incorporating legend, history, enchantment, and a temple of memory with a commensurate goddess, called Les Fêtes de Polémie. In this year, Rameau produced his most significant comic opera, Platée, as well as completing 2 collaborations with Voltaire, the opera ballet, Le Temple de la Gloire, and the comédie ballet, La Princesse de Navarre. For these, Rameau at last received official recognition. He was granted the title Compositeur du Cabinet du Roi and awarded a substantial pension. However, 1745 also saw the beginning of the bitter enmity between Rameau and that paragon of philosophers, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, who had ambitions himself to become a composer. Rousseau, despite being known for his philosophical works, had written an opera, Les Muses Galantes, that had been inspired by Rameau's Indes Galantes. Rameau, however, was unimpressed by this musical tribute. But by the end of the year, Voltaire and Rameau, who were occupied with other work, commissioned Rousseau to turn La Princesse de Navarre into a new opera called Les Fêtes de Ramire. Rousseau then claimed the two had stolen the credit for the libretto and music that he had contributed, though these claims seemed spurious. Nevertheless, embittered, Rousseau held a grudge against Rameau for the rest of his life. In addition, Rousseau was a major participant in the second great quarrel that erupted over Rameau's work, the so-called Querelle des Bouffons, or the argument or quarrel of the buffoons of 1752 to 1754, which pitted French tragédie en musique against the Italian opera buffa, the comic opera. Rameau was accused of being outdated and his music too complicated in comparison with the simplicity and natural openness of a work like Pergolesi's La Serva Pardona. Almost as a reply, in the mid-1750s, Rameau criticized Rousseau's contribution to the musical articles in the Encyclopédie, which led to a quarrel with the leading philosophes d'Alembert and, notoriously, Diderot. In 1753, La Pouplinière took Jean-Thérèse Gourmand as his mistress, the daughter of the harpsichord maker Jacques Gourmand. Taking the moniker Madame de Saint-Aubin, she proved as scheming as her opportunistic husband, who practically threw her into the bed of Pouplinière, the rich financier. It was under her influence that La Pouplinière engaged the services of the Bohemian composer Johann Stamitz, who succeeded Rameau in his position with Pouplinière's orchestra. Rameau continued his pursuits as theorist and composer into the early 1750s, when his rate of productivity began to wane. However, he still wrote another comic opera, Les Paladins, in 1760, and a final tragédie en musique, Les Boréades. Rameau died on 12th September 1764, 13 days before his 81st birthday. Just as he was baptized the same day as his birth, he was buried in the church of Saint Eustache, Paris, on the same day of his death, but the exact site of his burial remains unknown. Rameau's music is characterized by the exceptional technical knowledge of a composer who wanted, above all, to be renowned as a theorist of the art, using his novel techniques, but not straying from the framework of established forms. To the Lulliists, disturbed by his complex harmonies, Rameau was a revolutionary, and to the philosophes, perhaps a reactionary. In fact, it did occur on several occasions that Rameau was forced to remove parts from his works after only a few performances, because the singers had been either unable or unwilling to execute it correctly. Rameau's musical works included cantatas, motets for large choirs, works for solo or accompanied harpsichord, and works for the stage. Above all, he is remembered for these, his operas, ballets, and dance music. French Baroque opera indeed has a richer and more varied sound than that of Italian opera that was contemporary to it, in its placement and significance of choruses and dances, arias and recitative. Italian opera in Rameau's day, the opera seria and opera buffa, comprised arias, duets, trios, quartets, septets, and recitativo. The text of the arias was subordinate to the music, as they were primarily to showcase the virtuosity of the singer. French opera, conversely, since Lully's debut, limited vocalise techniques so that the text remained understandable in the arias, rendering a subtle equilibrium between the musical and the recitative. It was this form that Rameau excelled at producing and innovating, including in his operas purely musical, virtuosic overtures, as well as dance, chansons, rigodon, gavotte, passe-pied, tambourin, for example, whilst incorporating the stage direction and effects into his music. In addition, Rameau has been dubbed the greatest ballet composer of all time. The genius of his creation rests on his perfect artistic permeation by folk dance types, intermingled with the preservation of living contact with the practical requirements of the ballet stage, which, as has been expressed by one biographer, prevented an estrangement between the expression of the body from the spirit of absolute music. Rameau's 1722 treatise on harmony initiated a revolution in musical theory. He referred to a fundamental basis of all Western music, incorporating mathematics, commentary, analysis, and a didacticism intended to illuminate the structure and principles of music. He attempted, with the precision of a theorist, to derive universal harmonic principles from natural phenomena, embracing the new philosophical rationalism that was to embody the Age of Enlightenment. His fame subsequently spread throughout all Europe, and his treatise became the definitive authority on music theory, forming the foundation for instruction in Western music that remains today. So, my friends, have you enjoyed another foray into the 18th century in the study, where we have heard a little bit of bow scratching, but also some pen scratching from a disgruntled musician, some feathers and ink. I hope you are nice and relaxed. Be good to yourself, be kind to others, and, as always, be extraordinary.